Hey brothers and sisters, welcome back to my channel. So I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw a post from this woman that stood out to me. She was explaining how much she regretted living a life of sexual promiscuity. She had bought the lie from the feminism movement that says that you can do the same thing men can. She believed that she can have the career of her dreams, have nothing but casual sex, and be empowered by her sexual prowess. She basically took pride in being a man-eater because it somehow took the power away from men and put it back into her own hands. So in her mindset, being sexually liberated meant empowerment. But before I go ahead and play you the clip, I have one small little request, and that is that you like this video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Now, here is the clip.
I regret being a slut. I'm grateful for the ability to control my reproductive cycle and make my own money. But that freedom has come at a price. The dark side of the sexual revolution is that even though it liberated women, unyoking sex from the consequences has primarily benefited men. But if I'm honest with myself, of the dozens of men I've been with, at least the ones I remember, I can only think of a handful I don't regret. The rest I would put in the category of casual, which I would define as sex that is either meaningless or mediocre or both. If I get really honest with myself, I'd say most of these usually drunken encounters left me feeling empty and demoralized and worthless.
Now, let's imagine that you have a 10-year-old child that comes up to you and they're asking you, Mom, Dad, I want a car. And you're like, oh, I'll get you a car once you turn 16. Once you've taken the proper instructions, once you've taken your classes, once you've gotten licensed, you get your permit and then you get your license, I'll gift you a car. And they're like, no, I'm ready for a car now, so I want a car now. Now, just imagine if you said yes to your 10-year-old child and you go ahead and get them a car. What's gonna happen? They're gonna probably crash. They're probably gonna injure someone else or themselves. They're not equipped mentally, physically. They don't have the legal documents to be able to show that they are ready for that type of commitment. And I liken this example to sex. So when we look at sex, we look at how beautiful it is. It's powerful. It was created by God. It's the union of two people, a husband and a wife, and they come together and become one flesh. God created sex for married couples to enjoy intimacy. But when we go out and we just fornicate, despite not having the legal rights, that license, that spiritual discernment, we go out there and we just start having sex with people, what ends up happening is we get into toxic relationships. We become obsessed with the person because when you share your body with someone, you're going to feel so much more attached than if you guys were just simply friends. We are like that 10-year-old that's asking to drive, that's asking to have something that we are not ready for, that we don't have a legal license for, right? In God's eyes, He honors marriage. When we go out there and we have sex outside of His will, we are literally playing with our lives. We wonder why we have so much chaos. We wonder why there's so much damage and trauma to our hearts. The Bible says in Proverbs 5:15, drink water from your own well and share your love only with your wife. We were not created to give our bodies to this person, then we break up, and then give it to the next person, and then we break up, giving our bodies away to each person that we come into contact or in a relationship with. We were not created for that. Do you understand how much damage that does to your spirit, your heart, your mind, and your sanity? Let's keep watching the clip.
I wouldn't have said that at the time, though. At the time, I would have told you I was liberated, even while I tried to drink away the sick feeling of rejection while my most recent hookup didn't call me back. At the time, I would have said one-night stands made me feel emboldened. But in reality, I was using sex like a drug, trying unsuccessfully to fill a hole inside me with men. Pun intended. I know regretting most of my sexual encounters is not something a sex-positive feminist who used to write a column for Playboy is supposed to admit. And for years, I didn't. Let me be clear. Being a slut and sleeping with a lot of men is not the only behavior I regret. Even more damaging was what I told myself in order to justify the fact that I was disposable to these men. I told myself I didn't care.
One of the biggest lies that you can ever tell yourself is that you do not care, when in reality, you do. Modern day feminism convinces women of today that hookup culture, using birth control, and not shaving is all liberation. That working for a boss, climbing that corporate ladder and becoming a boss babe is more empowering and more valuable than raising the next generation. I used to personally know a feminist, and I just remember she was always angry. She also seemed bitter, and one thing I remember was just how defensive she always was. I remember having the most compassion that I can muster up during our conversations, and it wasn't enough. She would still get defensive, and it got to a point where it was exhausting to maintain that friendship.
I didn't care when a man ghosted me. I didn't care when he left in the middle of the night or hinted that he wanted me to leave. The walks of shame, the blackouts, the anxiety. The lie I told myself for decades was, I'm not in pain, I'm empowered. I knew it would be hard to read this. I lost my virginity at 17 to my boss at a restaurant where I worked. And a year later, I experienced my first sexual trauma. I felt damaged and dirty, and I blamed myself. Everyone responds differently to these situations. I dealt with the overwhelming shame by becoming hypersexual and promiscuous. The culture was right there to pick me up and dust me off. I doubled down on being a proud slut and internalized the biggest and most damaging lie, that loveless sex is empowering.
Casual sex, friends with benefits, booty call, sneaky links are all terms used to describe meaningless sex. Now, when you take something as intimate and soul bonding as sex and you degrade it down to mean nothing but a means to an end, a way to just relieve yourself and then send the person away like it meant absolutely nothing, you are fooling yourself if you think that you will not get hurt. You cannot share your body in one of the most intimate acts and not expect to get attached. Galatians chapter 5 verse 16 to 21 says, "So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God."
I basked in the girl power glow of that delusion for decades, weaponizing my sexuality while convincing myself I was full of the divine feminine. I was full of I told myself that because I could seduce a man, I was powerful. But as Perry says in her book, women can all too easily fail to recognize that being desired is not the same thing as being held in high esteem.
There's a huge difference between being desired and being respected. You should always desire to be respected. Of course, desire is important, but the glue that actually maintains the integrity of the relationship is respect. I mean, what good is it for someone to desire you, but then the moment that they are inconvenienced, they treat you like garbage? Take that somewhere else. Let's continue with the clip.
Deep down inside, I knew that to be the case. But as a defense mechanism, I created a man-eater persona. My mantras were rigid. You can either have a career or a relationship, but you can't have both. Intimacy is creepy. Motherhood and children are a trap. Sex is only about power. Another set of lies built on trauma. When a man I slept with had the courtesy to reach out, I mistook relief for happiness, rewiring my brain to be grateful for the bare minimum. The saddest realization is how low I set the bar.
Chivalry is dead. We hear that all the time. We went from being courted, having dates planned way in advance, phone calls, flowers, note cards, all things pertaining to romance and chivalry, to now we are dealing with a cohort of people who pretty much do not call you anymore. Everything is done through texting. People are not planning dates. People are asking to meet you at the last minute. And most of them don't even have an end goal in mind. Whereas before, marriage was always the end goal, but now it's, let's just see where it goes. Ugh. I completely believe that the dating bar is in hell. If you're getting a text message from someone that you like for a few days straight, you're pretty much on cloud 9, because now the bare minimum has become the new normal. Let's finish the clip.
A lifetime of allowing myself to be the other woman, taken for granted or treated like a doormat under the false pretense of being empowered, came to head one night with the arrival of a text message from an on-again, off-again lover. "Good night, baby. I love you," it said, quickly followed by "wrong person." Rock bottom doesn't always look like losing everything or ending up in jail. I wanted to be able to have meaningless sex like a guy, but it didn't work. Today's youth are fed an even more dangerous lie than the one that was fed about loveless sex. I was told sex doesn't matter. They're being told biology doesn't matter. This is a tragedy. I regret being a slut. I regret it because I regret that those men can say they slept with me. As Gen X women in particular really relate to this, and it's like they're stumbling back from a war being like, go back. It was a lie. It's a trap. It just seems like women who have been sold this kind of millennials too, in particular, the like people who grew up with Sex in the City and this idea that we can just have sex with men consequence free and that it doesn't somehow damage our soul. A lot of women have said that they identify with this. The problem with so much of this stuff is that you keep doing damage to yourself. At least I did. In my attempt to keep proving to myself that sex was empowering, that I could have sex like a man, I kept damaging myself, damaging my spirit and soul in ways that I didn't really fully comprehend at the time. I was too young. And I was too high or drunk in many instances. And you can see when I read the piece, it's still painful because I wish I knew better. And I guess part of the reason that I wrote this piece is for my daughter. I want her to know better. And for all the young women out there, you don't have to play that game. If you feel in your heart, like, I don't think I can have sex with someone and not get attached, and I don't know the person, and I feel like it's very intimate, you're right. That's true.
So I played this clip to pretty much show you what the aftermath is when you live a life of promiscuity, of meaningless sex and casual hookups. Not only is it unfulfilling, but it is degrading and it strips you of your dignity. A message to my God-fearing brothers and sisters who are out there and are currently single, and you are dealing with this current hookup culture where you feel like no one has the same values as you. You're trying to date, but no one wants a serious relationship. I just want to provide you some encouragement. In this type of environment where it seems impossible to find that needle in the haystack, where it seems like no one will exceed the bar or even come close to it, I want you to think that if God is the God of abundance, the creator of all things, the Alpha and the Omega, the omnipresent and perfect loving Father, if he was capable of making this universe and everything in it, then he is capable of providing you a God-fearing, loving spouse. A person who will not only exceed the bar, but exceed your most wildest dreams or imagination. Someone that you would know that it had to be God himself that brought this person to you, because these types of people are not in them streets. They're not the types of people that are going to be on these apps looking to hook up, just looking for their next booty call. None of that. None of that. These people are focused. They have a mission and a purpose. It is in the impossible where God shows out. Think about Lazarus, who was dead for 4 days. Why didn't Jesus go to Lazarus before Lazarus died? Or why didn't he go right after he died? He waited 4 days because the situation with Lazarus had to be impossible. Lazarus was dead for 4 days before Jesus raised him from the dead, because that way only God can get the glory. You would know that it was only God. So when you look around and you see today's dating culture that is absolutely in shambles, and you see everyone is pretty much hooking up with everyone and no one wants nothing serious, understand that it is in the impossible situation where God shows out the most. Think Moses and the Red Sea. Think Daniel and the lion's den. David and Goliath. I am a testament to this faith. I was a 34-year-old single mother and I was practicing abstinence. Y'all, tell me how impossible that must have been for me. A 34-year-old single mom who practices abstinence. You're dealing with a bunch of people who are just into hooking up. You think that I had a chance? I had no chance. And yet I met my husband, and within 6 months, we were married. And now we're looking to buy a house and building our family. This has truly been a testament of what God can do in your life. I would like to end this video with one of my favorite verses from the Bible, which is Matthew 19:26, and it says, Jesus looked at them and said, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. I pray that this video blessed you, and if it did, then please share it, hit the like button, and comment down below on what you guys think about the modern feminism movement. All right, you guys, until next time, God bless you.